So we have, as I mentioned a couple weeks ago, we made a single page book. I've put a link to it in the description below. Is there a list of past challenges, says Susan. Do you know, that's a good question. I'm not sure. I'll have a look. I don't think so. I haven't been very organised about it. I would like to get a little bit more organised, so perhaps I'll do that. So it was a one-page book. I'm not going to sort of talk through the whole thing, but it was a piece of paper folded into 8. Let me just quickly show you. So for this book, I'm using some eco prints. I'll do one so you can see. So I'm going to fold it in half. Actually, going to do it both ways. This is a, oh goodness, let me just grab my awl. This is quite a thick printmaking paper, so it's going to be quite a chunky little book. And the grain of my paper runs this way, luckily. So let's just make one of the signatures, as it were. I'm folding in both directions because it is a thick paper. It's Stonehenge, and I forget what the weight is, but it's fairly substantial because I was eco printing with it and I wanted it to withstand the steam. Okay, so I folded that into 2, 4, 6, 8 sections. Just grab my knife. Don't you love that? Okay, we're on the usual hunt the tool. Hunt the tool, folks, hunt the tool. Where's my knife? Do you know, honestly, I prepare all this the night before, and you wouldn't really think it, would you? I have no idea where my knife has gone. Excellent. Oh well. Let's pretend that this is my knife. I'm going to slice through here. Don't do this, for heaven's sake. Use your knife, but you're going to cut through this centre section. I think my knife might have just fallen on the floor right then. We've just cut that with a knife. We fold it over like this, and we form our little book. You can sort of twist it around however you like to make whichever page you would like appear on the front. I quite like that one. The edges are uneven along here because this is really quite thick paper. So we have made one mini book, and this is going to be one signature. What I'm going to do is, do you see how there's 1, 2, 3, 4 pages? I'm going to open this up to the center and punch sewing holes in here into this center. So we're not punching it here or here, we're going to punch it right in the center. And to do that, we're going to make ourselves a little template from a piece of card. So here's one I made yesterday. Here's all my pages that I made yesterday. I've pre-punched them. Before I started, I decided what order I wanted them in, and whichever was going to be at the top, the head, I marked with a tiny dot. So you can see all these tiny dots, hopefully. So I'm just going to set those to one side. I've had those sort of wrapped in a piece of paper and pressing overnight, because you see they kind of like I said, still quite chunky. So I'm going to make this the top of my book. I'm going to mark it with a pencil. Here's my top. And to make the little template, the template is the same height as our signatures, as it were. And to create the holes, or to figure out the positioning of the holes, the top hole, 1/2 inch from the top. The bottom hole is 1/2 inch from the bottom. Then I just put 2 other holes. I just space them about 1 inch from the first and last holes. It doesn't really matter. Just sort of place 2 more holes relatively evenly. This little book only measures 3 3/4 inches, or in centimeters, 95 millimeters, so 9.5 centimeters. So it's small. So I'm only doing 1, 2, 3, 4 stitches. If it were bigger, I would add extra stitches in here. But you can do an odd or an even number. It doesn't matter, because it's the kind of sewn that goes up and down. It's not paired needle or anything. Okay, so let's pretend, not let's pretend, let's do it. I'm going to grab my punching cradle. Here's the signature that we're using. Remember, we're punching right in the center. Pop it in my punching cradle. You don't need a punching cradle. You could use a catalogue or something. Here's the head. Actually, I'm going to do it this way around so you can see it a bit better. There's the dot, so I know the head is up here on this side. Popping my little template in there and lining it up and just popping sewing holes in. And then you would do this for as many of the 1-page books that you're going to bind together. So that's our little signature. And on this template, this top hole and this bottom hole are going to be our kettle stitches, and then these 2 here are going to be link stitches. So if, like I said, if you had a bigger book, you might add in more of these linking stitches in addition to a kettle top and bottom. If you're new to making books, this might be a little confuzzling, but hopefully you'll get something out of it. I'm not going to use this one that I just made because it hasn't been pressing overnight. Well, these have been pressing overnight, although you wouldn't be able to tell because look how bouncy they are. But this really could use a good press before I stitch it. So I'm just going to set that to one side, and this is probably enough for us to sew. So you can see I've already pre-punched the holes. Hopefully you can see that. I hope it's not too blurry for you. So we have the stitch at the, which is the top. This is the top stitch at the top, which is going to be a kettle, stitch at the bottom, which is a kettle, and 2 link stitches in the middle. And then in this book here, which was even tinier, I only did 1 link stitch in the middle, because this was like not even, this was barely 3 inches. So I did a kettle, and then 1 link stitch in the center. So you're going to adjust that based on the size. Let me see if you have any questions. Yeah, good idea, Jasla, about pinning them. Celeste or Dosa Dots book made in this way. Cool. All right, so you're going to need a needle and some thread. I'm using wax linen thread. If you're horrified at the thought of doing a weaver's knot, in terms of how much thread, I would do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times the height of the book plus more. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, because there's 7 signatures, and then I might do a couple extra just to make sure I have enough. But if you don't mind doing weaver's knots, I would perhaps do a smaller piece of thread, because look, this is quite long, right? Okay, so we're going to grab a needle. Let's set these to one side so they're not in our way. We need a needle, but we also need a couple pins with sort of rounded heads like this. So you'll see what these are for. The thread I'm using is a 4-ply wax linen thread, and it is from Royal Wood Limited. That is where I get my linen thread from. Excuse me while I just thread this without my glasses on. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to attempt, folks, to sew backwards so that you can see this. Let's see how that goes, shall we? Gonna grab a little clip as well. I don't have a clip. Yes, I do. Number one tick. Oh yeah, little quilting clip. All right. So remember, our hole is right in the center there. I'm going to start out. This is the head of my book. I'm just checking the comments a second. Lucios, is there a place where you store your FB Live videos? Yes, on my Facebook page, there is a tab which says videos, and all the live videos are there. Okay, so I'm just going to start the first hole on the outside. So I'm coming from outside to inside, and I'm going to leave about, gosh, what is that, about 4 inches, because at the end I'm going to feed it back inside. So leave a decent tail, and I don't want that to get in my way, so I'm just going to clip it to the back cover with just going to use this quilter's clip to clip it out the way so it doesn't get on my nerves. There we go. Okay, so we started on the outside. This is our tail and it's out of the way. Then come inside, hole number 2. And this is where we're going to use a pin. We're going to loop back inside that same hole, but if we don't put something there, it's going to, honestly, this is really fun trying to sew backwards. Normally you would sew with the book facing you, right, like this, so I can see it, but I'm trying to do it backwards so you can see it. So if I pulled this thread all the way through, it would just pull out. So what we're going to do is put this pin head there to hold the loop in place. I might even twist that around so it's not in the way. And then I'm going to pull tight. So there's a little loop there wrapped around that pin head. I'm on the inside of the book. I'm now coming outside. So if you're just joining us, we are making a link stitch book from one-page books that we made a couple of weeks ago. And if you are looking for that video, it is linked in the description section. I'm going to come back in that same hole again. If I pull it all the way through, it'll just pull back inside. So we're going to put a little pin there to hold that loop in place. Let me put it this way around. Okay, then we'll come out the end. I'm coming out the end hole number 4 in my case. So hold on, I've got a loop here. I don't want that. That needs pulling tight. So on what you see on the inside is 3 straight stitches. What you see on the outside is your tail, 2 loops held in place with pins, and your sewing thread. Okay. I'm just seeing if there's any questions. I don't think so far. Let's grab another signature. Let's make sure our heads are lined up. Where's my head? Here's my head. Here's my head. So we need to flip that over actually. There we go. Just going to move that clip out of the way. Need to flip this over. Pins out of my way so I don't stick myself. Here's the head of my book. Here's the head of my next signature. And the reason I keep talking about, oh, where's the head, where's the head? It's because when we make this template and then we punched all the holes, if we get these mixed up, these holes won't line up nicely. You'll get like a zigzag, even though you think you measured it perfectly. Right, let's open it to the center where we punch the holes, and we're going to come in the end hole. There's no kettle stitch here. Oops, wrong end. We're just climbing up. So this is like a straight climbing up stitch, okay? Just working it from the inside, forging my hole from the inside. I really hope you can see this clearly. Okay, so now I'm just going to turn it sideways so I can see. I'm on the inside at hole number 1. I'm going to come out. Hole number 2. Pull nice and tight. We don't want it loose. So hopefully, if your internet connection isn't too blurry, you can see this little pin holding this loop stitch in place from before. I'm going to carefully remove the pin and go through that loop like that. Okay, we abandon that pin, put it back in the pin cushion, come round, pull nice and firmly through. Then we have our first little link stitch. We're going to come back into that same hole. So this link stitch, I just have to lift it up so I can see it. This link stitch is what's called a non-looping link stitch, because we're traveling in the same direction as the sewing, if that makes sense. If we were doing a looping link stitch, we'd sort of come back on ourselves to form the loops. It'll be clearer once we do the next row of link stitches. Come out hole number 3. These holes are quite it's got a lot of paper come through these holes. All right, I've come out hole number 3. Let's remove that pin, come up through that loop that was left there, and then come straight back in this hole. So I have a question for you while you're watching me do this, because it must be like watching paint dry. I am creating a little list of basic bookmaking tools and supplies. I want to get your input on those. Let me just talk this through and then I'll get you to comment for me. So I've come to the end. I've come out of hole number 4. Make sure everything's nice and tight. We'll lose the clip for a second and we're going to do a square knot. I know most of you know what a square knot is. Left over right, tuck it under. Right over left and tuck it under. Oops. I'm not sure I got that right. Here we go. There we are. So we will still be left with our 4-inch tail. You can clip it out of the way, or you can quickly rethread your needle, and I'll do that right now, and bring it back into side signature number 1. I say I'll do that now. No, I won't. So we'll just keep that clipped out of the way. Okay, we have 2 signatures. Let's add the 3rd. What do you think happens at the end of the 3rd signature? Make sure our heads are lined up. Anybody? Any of the experts? What happens at the end of the 3rd signature? But someone here knows. What kind of stitch will we add at the end of the 3rd signature? Ouch. It is like a 1 needle Coptic. Barbara, you are correct. Yeah, whether you can see it or not sort of depends on your internet connection, unfortunately. So do you see here, we just have a little climbing stitch. Okay. So, yes, Amy, you're right. That's right, Debbie. Yep, kettle. So we have a knot here between signatures 1 and 2. We have a little climbing stitch here. There's a climbing stitch here. Once we get to the end of this signature, we will have a kettle. But first we need to do the looping, the non-looping link stitch. So here's my needle. I'm coming this direction to this direction, so my needle is just going to loop under this stitch right here. Hold them together and bring it round. This is so strange, sewn backwards, but still. Then come back into the signature. Here we go. So my question to you is, I am creating a cheat sheet for beginners. What is one tool you cannot live without? As you know, a beginning bookmaker, what advice would you give to them as to what tool they need? I am kind of curious to make sure that I don't miss anything. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to go in the same direction that we're sewing. I beg your pardon if my hand's in the way. Let me see if I can do it left-handed. I'm going to come through there. So some people like, what's the word, a curved needle. I can't stand them. I'm just coming round like this, creating a link stitch and coming back through. Come back through to the middle. And then we'll do our first kettle. Come out hole number 4. We can do our first kettle stitch. We're going to count down 1, 2 gaps. We'll do this left-handed. Tell you something, the skills you get when you're doing this. Loop under here, but this is a kettle stitch, not a link stitch, so we have to come up through this loop right here. If it was just a link stitch, we'd just pull straight upwards, right? But it's a kettle, and the reason we're doing a kettle stitch is because we want to make the ends more secure. Pull up for your kettle. I'm just going to bone fold. All right. Good ruler, bone folder, cradle, bone folder, but micro spatula. Huh, interesting. GJ, you do a kettle, yeah. Oh, this is interesting. Aluminum square. All right, where's my head? I'm going to add another one. I will not probably sew all of these because I'm sure you'll just be bored to tears by the end of it, but you get the idea, right? I will show you what it would be if it was a looping link stitch. I'll explain that in a second if anyone really cares. It's the kind of thing that I care about, but I don't really care. All right, let's pull this through. And these eco prints, honestly, I think I did a couple years ago. Oh God, I just can't get that through there. And these leaves were from eucalyptus from Trader Joe's, because we're not in Australia and we don't have fabulous eucalyptus. I found some at Trader Joe's, and it wound up printing really nicely. So I just climbed up. So this is not a kettle stitch, this is just like a straight stitch. You climb up, pull tight, come out, hole number 2. You do that link stitch again. So if it was a looping link stitch, we would come back on ourselves and loop it around, but because we're going in the direction that we're sewing, it's called a non-looping link stitch. See what I mean? If we were doing it a looping way, we'd go back around the opposite direction. And some people think that's more secure. I just happen to like how this looks. Come back inside, and then we'll just keep going. So you just keep repeating this, alternating kettle stitches on the ends. One more link stitch right here, round, back through to the middle. And then finally back to the end. So let's pretend that we've got to the end of the book, that we've added all of these signatures. because it's really, we're just going to keep repeating what we've just done. Let's do a final kettle. So down, 1, 2. Just going to pull that out, up through the loop, pull up nice and carefully. Let's pretend that's our final kettle. Let's pretend that we've added all of these on, we've got to the end. If you're nervous that these aren't secure, you could do a second kettle stitch here by looping around. I personally think one is just fine, but you could do a second one. And then I'm going to bring the needle back inside that final signature and tie off. So this is just a way to join together. And we have to be careful is that you don't create a new hole. That's my favorite trick. So pull your needle and thread back inside and then tie off with a half hitch knot. So slide the needle under the straight stitch to create a loop and then pull the needle through. Sort of pull downwards like that. Do that a couple times. So this is a fun way to join together a whole bunch of these mini books into a chunky little mini book. Let's snip this off, and then the this one from here, I'm just going to get rid of the extra thread, rethread this needle. I'm going to take my glasses off to do this. Rethread this. Keep telling me what tools you cannot live without, and also what questions you have. You know what I need to do, I just need to bite the end of it, right? I'm trying to be all polite and nice. Darn it. Do you do this too? Like literally spend an hour trying to thread the needle for like a sewing that only takes like 5 minutes? There we go. Rethread the needle. This is where we began on the front cover. I'm just going to slide it back through the hole to the inside of the first page, the first signature, and slide it under and tie off. I'm obviously going to, I'll unpick this later and add on the extra signatures that we didn't do, but you'll just be bored to tears if I do the whole thing. So there is the beginnings of our link stitch book, and it's quite springy because the paper's super thick. Even though I've had it pressing overnight for hours and hours, so I would probably press it again when I was finished once it added on the final 3 signatures. So I don't. This is something about these books I really kind of like. They feel nice in your hand and chunky, and you could put a cover on. You could put like a matte board cover on if you wanted to. I may well just put some matte medium to protect this. This is a gift for a friend of mine who's coming over this afternoon. So I'll probably I might seal the front and back cover with a little bit of matte medium just to protect it. So yeah, so that's it folks.